Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Today, that man is John Keim, ESPN.com. Of course, longtime Commanders beat reporter. Cakes, how are you, sir?
Okay, but I've only covered the Commanders for a year and a half.
I'm trying to think of how I could make that math work as a joke, and even with my terrible math skills, Cake, I don't think that adds up. What is this, year, what do we decide, year 26, 27?
Well, but yeah, covering the Commanders, it's a year and a half. Covering
there
Washington's
you go.
franchise,
Okay.
It's a little bit longer, yes.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Okay, covering Washington for slightly longer, Commanders for a year and a half. And what I think is so interesting about the story that you wrote today on ESPN.com, which kind of examined the ties that bind Howell, Rivera, Bieniemy, and the fact that they are intrinsically in many ways tied together, is this is the most obvious story of the season. So how did you decide to attack, like the why you wanted to write it, duh. How did you decide to attack it to make it a little bit different, more interesting, and what are some of the questions that maybe weren't as surface level that you wanted to answer?
Just to kind of see if they all realized that they were tied. I mean, we all kind of know, but like how they thought about the perception of that. And, you know, and then especially like for Rivera, what I was really interested in with him was you're going into a very pivotal year. You've coached in this league a long time and you've made some big changes and you're rolling with a young quarterback. Why? Why do you feel comfortable doing that? And, you know, what does it say about you that you're doing that? And how do you perceive it? So that's what I was always, because we all can say that, but I'm curious to do they how much do they even think about it, which is not very much, because even, you know, with, I can't remember which one of them said it, but like quarterback is tied to everybody. Like if Sam Howell has success, they all have success. But the ones who can really benefit would be, you know, obviously Rivera, because then if you're the new owner, then you be more apt to keep him around. And if Bieniemy, if it goes really well, then Bieniemy could maybe get that head coaching job at some point. Now, I don't know if you'd get it after 1 year. I think you'd have to have a really, really, really good offense, but you're putting yourself in position to be that guy and show what you can do away from the Chiefs, that shadow of Andy Reid. So that's how I was interested in how they perceived it and if they realized, if they felt like that. And then for Rivera, why did you want to go this route at this time?
So for Rivera specifically, he's got this quote that kind of, you know, I think is the splashiest quote, if you will, the most interesting, the most thought-provoking, which is, you know, if I get fired after this year, we go 8-1 next year with 40 of 53 players in this quarterback, they go on and do bigger and better things, send me the Super Bowl ring. It's like, okay, that's not really how that works, but I get your point. But it almost reads as someone who is on some level resigned to that fact that, like, I feel like, you know, that he's thought about it enough that possibility is in his head, and he's almost preemptively wanting to make sure that he's not forgotten in the narrative of how they get to the ultimate point that he sees them going. But that's reading it. When you're having the conversation, the tone can always be very different than a quote presents on paper. How do you think Rivera thinks about his future to the extent that he thinks about it, and how long that future is as specifically the head coach in Washington?
Well, I can't answer how long that future is because we don't know. I mean, there are so many scenarios that would have to play out to determine what happens next with him. And, you know, there's a number of scenarios where we just don't know. He's been through this before. I mean, he went through this in Carolina, so he knows what the score is. And I've talked to him about this often during the off season. And I wrote a story back in March after the owners' meetings addressing some of this as well, right? Not the exact same thing, but more like, you know, the position you're in and the pressure. Do you feel pressure? And so this was kind of a continuation of that. So I think a lot of what it says to me is he feels really good about where they have the franchise finally. And, you know, we can all say, oh, it's 4 years, you know, blah, blah. But the other thing I put in there was the records of coaches after 3 years under Dan Snyder. And his record is very similar to Joe Gibbs, to Mike Shanahan, to Jay Gruden's. this has been a tough place to win with this owner for a lot of reasons. And so I think, for him, he feels like they finally have it at the spot they want it. So that was, to me, more when that quote that you read is more reflective of their belief and where they're headed. And yeah, you can say don't forget about me, but I think it's as much like, just remember where this started. So, because if Howell hits, then they're in good shape.
Right. Which is, the greatest what if you ever get quarterback right. It's so hard. He did it once with Cam Newton, and they went to a Super Bowl. You do it somewhere else, and you can also be good. But I think the other part of this, John, is obviously the ownership side of it, and it's the part that's not in the story. So I realize I'm asking you a tough question here. John Keim, ESPN.com, is our guest today for Not My Beat. But I get asked this all the time. I'm sure you do too. And to me, the answer is always I don't know how much they've thought about it, but you've had a chance to, talk to ownership at times throughout the process and ask them questions in the press conferences and stuff. And you talk to people around because you're a reporter and you're good at it and that's what you do. But when people say oh, is there a chance that Rivera can move to the front office and Bieniemy becomes the head coach? Or what does he have to do this year to be retained? Do you think ownership actually even knows those answers at this point in the game?
No. And so when people start speculating on them, you don't have any clue what they're going to do. You're guessing. And I don't like to guess on that stuff, right? And so, no, they don't have a clue. This is the thing that people have to realize with Josh Harris, he's a very patient owner, all right? And so when he's making decisions, he's not he doesn't make them in a rash fashion. So there's no chance. Now you can enter into it and you can start formulating thoughts and ideas, but they're going to let it play out. And they've said that consistently because that's his style. When he's working with other GMs that are under him, whether it's in New Jersey for the Devils, 76ers, other people who have dealt with him all say the same thing. He's just basically ask a lot of questions, see what you have here, and then make up your mind. They're not here to win right now. They're here to build something good. You don't make rash decisions. So they'll let it play out, and they'll the one thing that he's been known for is just his leadership style is to hire good people and let them do their jobs. It's quite a concept that was foreign here for about 24 years. Right. By coincidence. So, there were good people hired here, but they weren't always allowed to do their jobs. But there are always others that will offset those good people to prevent all that from happening. So this guy's MO, though, is his reputation is hire that and let them do their jobs and assess what you have. But if you're going to put trust in somebody, you've really got to assess where are they as a leader? Is it the style that you want, et cetera? So that's what this whole year will be about. We'll be assessing Ron Rivera, the front office, Jason Wright, everybody out there that's connected to that organization is now under the microscope. So no, there's no chance at all. And I can tell you, there'd be certainly no chance that they'd say, oh yeah, Bieniemy's our guy. No way. There's no way they'd say that at this point. That's just not how he operates. Right. So, how it plays out, I don't know. But there's no chance that he knows at this point that. So oh yeah, we'll bump Rivera up and we'll do this. No. So, I think you start with how can we, if you're Josh Harris, how can I help this team win? What can I do? And what do I need to do? And then you're assessing along the way because, again, the goal is to build something long-term, not just to win this year, but it's to win over the long run.
No, I'm totally with you in looking at the way Harris thinks about things. I don't think that Rivera, has to make the playoffs or anything like that because it's just not how Harris thinks about the world.
Right. We don't know. It's going to be a lot about again, leadership style. Is this someone is he giving me the answers to the questions? Is he giving me the answers I need to the questions I'm asking? How is he at putting together a staff? How is he at dealing with this? Are you good here, but maybe you need to bolster over here? And if you do that, what if he wants to change the front office, but Rivera's got the power? How does that play out? I don't know. So there's so many questions. People are going to have to let the season play out because nobody knows at this point. And we can all say, people can guess all they want, but nobody knows.
Right. John Keim, ESPN.com, is with us here on the Team 980. So that kind of circles back to Rivera and what he has been and what he could be, and folds into the last question as well, which is like, when you look at where Rivera has come up short, to the extent that they haven't won a playoff game yet, and if we call that coming up short, like how much of that can you attribute back to not getting, whether it's the support, the tools, the whatever from ownership, that Rivera can be a better version of himself under Josh Harris and ultimately get this team where they want to go?
Really, it's about building. So I'm not going to sit here and blame like every loss on Dan Snyder, right? You can't do that. That's because like there are games where a guy drops a pass or throws an interception. Well, that's not Dan Snyder doing it. However, when you're building an organization, let's take the play off the field, that's where the owner plays a factor. And it's just, his style was, sure, you can go back to like during Jay Gruden's era and some guys that they would sign and then re-sign, guys like, the coaches and others did not want. They would sign them, maybe they played linebacker, and then they'd re-sign them despite what the coaches say they needed or wanted. And like you're doing that and you're putting people in a position where you're not helping them out. You're doing you're doing it based on what, right? Who are you listening to when you do that? You listen to Bruce Allen? Like, come on, you know what I mean? Like, so there's, you know what I mean? Like, so it's who are you listening to help build this? And are you putting something that where people are actually working together? So that's in a general sense, right? And, so I think for Rivera's sake, like this off season is still all on them because he just started working for Josh Harris a month ago, so it's hard to say the impact of that. I think the biggest impact for him is that we're not sitting there talking about, and the players aren't being asked about like, oh boy, your owner did this or this thing is happening. What do you think? Or you're not feeling the toxicity from the fan base, right? Understandably upset over what's happened here. That's the stuff that we're like, how much does that matter? But as far as building a roster, building an organization, I just don't know that you could say that any coach here has really had what you needed to in order to do that at the right level. And it's reflective in the record. It is, like you're trading for quarterbacks that guys tell you they don't want, and then you're doing it anyway, or you're signing, you know what I mean? It's just foolishness. And so like, you're not going to have that. So for whoever is here, and I know this isn't necessarily what you asked, but for whoever's here going forward, that's where they can benefit. Now they better make the right moves because, he's giving you the resources. So if you don't, then you can't blame the owner, right? Because if he's not meddling, he's giving you resources. So, but as far as like this year, it is like you can't absolve this staff of any blame for what's happening. You just can't. They've been wrong on some things, the line. They need to, the line has to be better this year, a lot better. Have they built it well enough? We'll see. So that's on them. But, trading a couple threes for Carson Wentz, that was a panic move. There's one guy in that organization who used to like to push things like that and cause like bad trades, and that was the guy who's no longer here. So you think, it's like, what could you do with those So I just think it's use of resources. But again, they have to show that they're going in the right direction for it to work, and we'll find out. And again, they like what they have. It's got to show it on the field.
Right.
And I don't know that I answered the question directly, but
no, I think you did, maybe not directly, but like in there's I think the pieces of it. I think one of the biggest things for Harris versus Snyder in terms of what they'll bring is Josh will ask smart questions. Dan gave dumb answers. And like when you talk about the personnel decisions, it's like Harris, I think a good owner, a good person at the top of an organization, a good leader will say like, hey, why are you doing this? What is this? And if they're smart and some level informed and listening to the right people, they'll be able to poke holes in your logic if they're there and make you really think about it and arrive at the best possible solution. Dan would show up and be like, hey, we traded for this guy. Have fun.
Well, Dan, his MO too was more frenetic. And it was like, do you want to trade with this guy? Okay, go do it. Just go do it. Which, okay, that's on you. Other times it'd be like, no, this is what I want. And it's just like, it was a little bit more frenetic. And it's not it's not like with Harris, it is more patient. It is more, probing. And which when you do that, you ask questions that might pertain to the move, and you realize, like, have you thought through everything?
Right.
And so it forces you, like, you're presenting to Harris what you want to do and why. With Dan, it would be like, we want to do this. Okay, go do it. Just go do it. You want Amari Cooper, go sign him. And so, like, it's not. It wasn't
far more
they
prudent.
Didn't win. Yeah. Well, it wasn't a good leadership style. They didn't win, and he was not a good leader. And and the organization is what it was, and so I think whoever's here going forward has a better chance of success, and whether it's Rivera or someone else, because here's the other thing: if Rivera is gone, it probably means the offense didn't do well. So can you really elevate Eric Bieniemy in that case? So. And if the offense does really well, who's the guy that hired him? And you have the quarterback. And you know what I mean? It's just there's so many things with that, but that's why it goes back to that story, which is how they're all tied together.
Right. Yeah, it's the sticky. You might wind up in the sticky wicket again that they wound up in 2016 when Sean left, where it's like, yeah, we know that guy's awesome, and the guy we got might not be that, but like he hired him and the whole thing with McVay and Gruden back in the day. You could wind up there again. We'll see. That's a question for far down the road. Questions for right now for John Keim, ESPN.com, with us here on the Hoffman Show. They finally announced today things we knew were coming up. I don't want to call it upgrades. Titles being made official. Upgrades to all those men's salaries for sure. On the coaching staff, those were all expected. The other thing we've been waiting for is if there's going to be any movement player-wise. Do you think that could be in the cards, or have we now gotten to the point where we're in season and the Montez Sweats and the Cam Curls, who we're hoping to potentially get new deals, are just going to have to wait till after the season?
I can't say I think there's several months in between, so I don't know. I have not been told that, like, oh, no, they're not going to do anything. It's just more there's so many things they have to do right away that while for fans might say this is a priority, these guys just got here. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, they're sinking $40 million into FedEx. That's a big priority for them too, because they need to upgrade their house, right? So while in the football side, there's a lot like, oh, this is the big thing. There's, for a group that just got here, there's so much that they have to sift through and get through. So that I know there isn't much movement there at all. They're well aware of the staff's desire to do things. So that's why I say, like, it could be something that I don't like. Craig, I haven't been told that they're going to do it during the season or that they're not. I haven't been told anything other than, what Ron Rivera said today. And what I know is that they've certainly had conversations with ownership about the desire to do this. I think there's still, I would say
it's on the to-do list. Is
it's on the to-do list, but for the players and the agents right now, I think patience is in order.
Got it. Obviously, everyone's being patient or trying to be, probably being pretty bad at it when it comes to Chase Young and what's going on with his stinger and whether or not he's going to play this weekend. I know Rivera spoke today and gave the line of, hey, we don't have to give an official injury report until tomorrow. But where are we at with him? Both kind of small picture of what you know or can tell us about his status for Sunday, and also kind of the general frustration, if there is any, around the organization that it's yet another week going into Sunday where you don't know if Chase Young's going to play, which there were a lot of those last year.
Yeah, it's a far different situation, though. So so I understand how people think, but this is a different injury. So it's not like if he was still about his knee, then like, okay, sure, this is different. Like the doctor has to clear him. Now, if the doctor clears him and he says, I'm not ready, well, then that's like last year. That, to my knowledge, is not what's happened at this point. So still has to get cleared by a doctor. We'll find out more tomorrow. Tomorrow is the first day they can put out the injury report. So we'll find out. I've been told a couple things like it's not as bad as what people think, but I don't know what that means because how bad do people think it is? You know what I mean? And so, so in other words, like if it's, I don't think it's anything else beyond what it was. And the other thing someone else pointed out to me last week is like, listen, the doctor, there was no rush to get him cleared before now because he didn't, like, if you cleared him, let's say 2 weeks ago, and I'm not even sure that he could have been. So, so this might be a little bit irrelevant, but like, or if they cleared him last week, well, there's no game. They don't really want him on the field taking any contact, so why not just let it rest as long as possible and then see where it's at this week? So, but I would just say his status is uncertain. You can't say anything other than that. There may be, I don't even know what level of optimism I'd attach to him playing Sunday. I would just say it's uncertain. But, but I don't, it's a different injury than last year.
Right.
So, and the doctor has to clear him. Last year, he was cleared. He had to mentally get over that hurdle. That was a different situation. Like, they had to convince him, and he had to convince himself that, like, yes, now is the time, and you need to see something now because you're running out of time. You need to get through this before the start of the season. This was, a little bit different. So, when the doctor clears, then we'll know. But we'll find out more tomorrow. That's what I would say.
Yeah, let's wrap up with this kind of bigger thought on the injuries rather than trying to speculate on where Terry is and where John is, where Chase is. But it's very easy for fans and even those of us in the media on the outside to be like, this Arizona team stinks. They don't need any of these guys. They can win without him. Give them an extra week. Have you ever encountered a coaching staff, nevertheless, one that thinks that way? Even with any, like, let's say it's even something with Terry where it's like, he might be okay, but we could give him an extra week. Like, that would really make us feel better. Like, is there any consideration of the opponent in week one when it comes to these guys coming back?
So let me just say this. The last time they had a winning season here was 2016. The last time they won a playoff game was 2005. You have a coaching staff in their fourth year that knows they need a good year. You don't discount any opponent because if you do, like, they're not good enough to do that. Now, can you sit there and say, like, okay, you know what? It's kind of iffy with Terry. I don't know. Like, it's not so much about like, well, we're playing the Cardinals. It's more like you got 16 more games after this. You need them for the next 16, and you don't want to take the risk of having him play and then then he hurts it again and now he's out for 5 or 6 more weeks. That would be the consideration for those guys. But if even privately, you could sit there and think like, yeah, you should beat them without him, but you can't play that way. They haven't been good enough to do that. They fell a game short of the playoffs last year. What if they had taken that approach in one of those games where, I don't even know which game you would say it because, there was not a game. Well, Houston, let's say, what if they had lost to Houston and they'd taken that approach? You know what I mean? Like, you can't. Right. I don't believe in that at all because they don't have the foundation for success that they need to fall back on that. And they need to get off to a strong start. They need to have a good showing to build a level of confidence that they're going to need to get through these first 6 games where they have to get off to a good start. So, no, Craig, I think it would be more like, again, if you're uncertain about someone and you say, like, this is an injury that could linger if you let it, then make sure it's 100% versus, well, it's the Cardinals, let's just sit him out. Even if the doctor says he's okay, we'll just sit him out because it's the Cardinals. Like, that's going to get them fired.
Right. No, 100%. There is a consideration of, like, long-term versus short-term, but the opponent doesn't factor.
No, it should not. Now, if you're 15-1, all right, right. Yeah, but like you're not in week one. You haven't done anything here to warrant that level of thinking. You can't go in like you're the Patriots. Like, all right, we got Brady. We're in the height of the Super Bowl thing, But even Belichick wouldn't have done that. But like you can say, I could understand that. It's not here. They've got to win.
To bring things full circle, John, they're not the Patriots.
We are the Commanders.
That's right. That is right. All right, John Keim, the story is so good, ESPN.com, about Howell, Bieniemy, and Rivera, how their fates are all tied together. Cakes, thanks for coming on the show. We'll do it again down the line somewhere later in the season. And in the meantime, we'll read your work at ESPN.com and be listening to the John Keim Report.
Thank you, Craig. Always enjoy it.
Thanks, buddy. That is John Keim, everybody, with us here on The Hoffman Show.
This is The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.